Chemtrails? What are chemtrails?
Chemical trails, Daddy, and they're very bad.
I look up to the sky. Can you tell me why? Can you tell me why?
Hello, this is Dane Wigington with GeoEngineeringWatch.org radio for the week of January, what are we, the 3rd, I think, 2015, new year. Got Russ Tanner and myself today. We'll take calls at about 15 after, so we can hopefully discuss a lot of these issues with people in the audience and try to get out as many data points as we can. The current cool down in the continental U.S., I'm sure everybody has taken notice of. It's happened the last 3 years in a row. Why at the end of the year and the beginning of the new year is this so consistent? Because it makes a lot of headlines. I want to back up to, I just got back from several days on the coast, met with U.S. Forest Service representatives who, the particular group I met with are all over the climate engineering issue. And so much so that they're taking heat from some others in the Forest Service that are resistant, as all of us who are in this battle understand that kind of resistance. But at least this particular group is very, very adamantly trying to spread the word. Met also with PG&E biologists, Pacific Gas and Electric, huge power company on the West Coast. Very sincere biologist, noting the bird decline. Part of his job description is to monitor the native bird populations. He's noted the decline, noted soils changes. Didn't have a clue about climate engineering. Not a clue. We need to overcome this. This is where meeting with the non-choir is so important, to start spot fires outside of the circles of those who already know about this issue. We need to reach out to those people, but with credible data. That's what's imperative. So hopefully some spot fires started within that particular group. And on this latest trip to monitor marine life and forest life, I've been around the ocean since I was very small. Spent a lot of time in Baja, California, along the Pacific coast, where there was lots of tide pool exploration. And the difference from when I was a kid to now is profound. In fact, this latest trip was most distressing. The marine foliage that grows along the rocks is dying. It's in fact very scraggly looking now. It's as the marine plants that cling to the rocks are dying off. We didn't see a single seal in numerous locations along the Northern California coast, where sea lions used to be very numerous. In fact, so much so in certain places you can't sleep at night because all you can hear is them barking. None. Didn't see a single sea lion. The trees are dying. One of the most notable die-offs is with the Sitka spruce, a very, very robust tree that lines the coast. These trees are adapted to handle incredible storms, wind. They have huge root systems, and they're tipping over or dying in many sections along the coast. In fact, there's whole groves of trees further inland that are dying off, huge patches. And yet even people right along the coast, people whose livelihoods depend on the marine life, seem completely oblivious still. And a lot of these people have heard of the climate engineering issue. I know that because I distributed to Humboldt State University, which is one of the areas I went to, about 200 commercial DVDs and about 2,000 flyers. So awareness of this is circulating, but a lot of people not yet ready to face this issue. But those seeds are still planted. And this is where, for all of us, it's extremely frustrating to not see results of our efforts, at least not yet in some arenas. But I think the undercurrent awareness is much, much greater than any of us realize. People that are grappling with having to face this issue, and they soon will have no choice but to face it. So on those days when it's easy to be frustrated and feel like we're swimming against a tide that is too powerful to stand against, this human denial. The fracturing of that denial, I believe, is occurring. It just needs a little more time to fully manifest. But I think the awareness of the climate engineering is much greater than we realize. This latest polar vortex, back to the cold in the U.S., that is so incredibly designed to confuse and divide the American population as to what's really going on, as we have the end-of-the-year headlines that are official now, again, 2014, the warmest year recorded globally. That's impossible to believe for those people on the ground who are in extremely cold temperatures right now, record cold in places. But that record cold is a very shallow layer. It's important to remember that. Very shallow. Alaska's had its warmest year on record, I believe, officially now, and that warmth is continuing. So in places in the Arctic, it's 50 degrees warmer than the lower 48. Obviously, that's wrong. So the cold air in the lower 48 is stolen from somewhere. This is the refrigerator syndrome. When you open the refrigerator, cold air spills out. When they alter the jet stream in a manner that pushes that cold air south over the continental U.S., warm air rushes into the Arctic. It has to happen. It can't not happen. And when they ice nucleate and create a shallow layer of cold in the ground, this is what it was like on the coast. Below freezing temperatures, things frozen right on the coast where we were. In order to better experience the environment there, even though I have the meetings I had, I camp out so that I can better experience what's happening there. So there was frozen patches of water in the morning, but by noon or 1 o'clock on 2 of those days, I was in the surf without a wetsuit near the Oregon border in January, or 30th of December and then 1st of January. That's astounding to be able to go into the water in that location at any time of year without a wetsuit, let alone this time of year. And the outdoor temperatures enough where I was not cold. I didn't stay there a long time, or certainly I would have gotten cold, but the cool down is, again, a very shallow layer and very short-lived. They can keep that layer there for a while, as they're going to do in the continental U.S. for a little bit longer to make a few more headlines. But it's important everybody look at the bigger picture, look at the larger picture. And we have all mainstream media now contributing to the deception of global populations, including media that I have once felt had more objectivity, like RTTV. But RTTV, Russia Today, is certainly doing everything they can to hide the climate engineering as well, because Russia's involved also, so is China, and this is where the collusion, even amongst opposing powers, is clearly going on and has been going on. So there is no reputable media at this point, none. In fact, I even see RTTV now trying to feed the black-white division in the continental U.S., really, really trying to feed it. Of course, trying to, in a certain sense, actually helping our government to feed that division. The issues are complex. They're not simple. This is where all of us need to be very discerning as to sifting out the baby from the bathwater on all issues. And as the power structure becomes more pressured, and they are absolutely being pushed into a corner, they become more and more dangerous, and they will play more and more cards. So now this division that started in Ferguson is being fueled into a wider scale, and we have all sides of the equation feeding that. We have the media feeding it. We have people in the black community also feeding it. It's important to remember that when the Jesse Jacksons and those type of, the Al Sharptons show up, they're fueling that division. They're not helping black people. They're fueling division. So from all sides, we have people that are contributing to the power structure's attempt to hide bigger issues like climate engineering with all sorts of other conflicts. So all of us from all sides of the paradigm need to recognize this sort of division and distraction for what it is. And also with media, we need to recognize that all mainstream media, including RTTV, including the Chinese news, which has had good news in the past, they're all hiding climate engineering, period. It's a nonlinear equation. So this is unraveling so quickly now. We have the power structure from all sides of the fence, increasingly desperate to hide the gravity of what's unfolding. Because if the population as a whole, whether it's U.S., Chinese, Russian, doesn't matter, when they truly begin to understand the gravity of what's unfolding, that the current paradigm is absolutely in the process of collapsing right now. There'll be a shock wave around the globe, and that's where all of our efforts need to continue in spite of opposition, that we are planting seeds to reach out of our current paradigms or the current choir to plant seeds with groups that don't know, like the biologists from PG&E that I met with several days ago, so that as these events on the ground unfold, people who would not have otherwise had the dots necessary to connect the whole picture now have those dots. Even if they're unwilling to connect that full picture, when we meet with them, if we give them the tools they need, they'll have enough parts to the puzzle to make the picture as things begin to unravel. So again, we have to reach out to these people with credible data, absolutely credible data, and all of us need to stand on solid ground with our facts. We need to do research so that we have a very clear and simple picture that for example, the climate science community increasingly speaks of geoengineering as a quote-unquote cure, or at least a stopgap measure for the unraveling climate. It's imperative we pass on enough credible data so that those people or others who are looking at the information from those people understand. We have 65 years of climate engineering, 65 years of data that makes clear climate engineering is not only not helping, it's making a bad situation exponentially worse and poisoning, quite literally, the entire planet in the process. So all of us need to, again, have a correct compass heading, study data as much as our time will permit, and stand on credible conclusions. So after this trip to the ocean again and seeing the die-off, the silence, there's no birds in the morning, that's another reason why I sleep in the woods, you can see firsthand then that the changes are profound. And again, non-linear. I want to stress that point. When we have organizations like the IPCC, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, largest scientific panel ever created in human history, and their data is wrong, as many people in our movement acknowledge, but it's wrong in the opposite direction of what many people like to think. They like to think the IPCC is alarmist and there's nothing wrong with the climate. It simply is not a credible position. The data does not support that. In fact, the IPCC is wrong in this sense. Their predictions and forecasts are far short of how bad our climate situation truly is. And when we have organizations like this that do not even consider feedback loops like methane and that do not acknowledge the scope and scale of the die-off, and who make models, and this was my original point, that it's nonlinear equation, who make models that look backward at the last 100 years and how much damage has occurred, and then project that forward for the next 100 years as if that can be done. It can't be done. That's a completely invalid model. You can't look backward and say, well, it's taken us 150 years to do this much damage to the climate, therefore at the current rate we have 150 more years before it gets X amount worse. That's a non-valid equation. You can't look backward at the graph and project that forward. So the bottom line is we have to all discern credible data for ourselves. We have to look at events happening on the ground and put the pieces of the puzzle together ourselves. Russ, if you can, I want to open up the phone lines early so we can get calls coming in. If you can give the number right now, and then we'll try to get some dialogue going on these points.
Absolutely. For those who want to call in, we're ready to take your calls, so please call on your phone, 718-717-8296. That's 718-717-8296. And when you call in, just please keep your phone muted until we call on you.
If this, Russ, I don't know if you've ever had a conversation like this. I have with some, now I would call them former friends, people I've known for 20 years, who once accused me of being twisted for wanting the current paradigm to collapse. I brought this up once before, but it's an important point. And yes, do I want the current paradigm to end? Yes, because if this current trajectory continues much longer, we'll have nothing left to save. And my response to these people who have children and who seem to want the party to continue, and they do have a very lavish lifestyle, this particular group. They like to go on cruises and so forth. And my point with them was, who's really trying to be benevolent in this equation? Me, who wants it to collapse in its current form so that we might have something left to salvage, or them who want to carry on their party a little bit longer, even if it costs any chance of a future for their children? Have you ever had such a conversation with anybody who seemed to want to cling to the current paradigm at any expense to their children?
Oh, absolutely. I have people all the time who, that is the general consensus among people who want to stay ignorant, is that they want the current paradigm to continue because they are afraid of change and they don't want to recognize that anything is wrong. They want to cling to the things that they have because it gives them a feeling of security. But of course, the whole idea of continuing the current paradigm means continuing to race closer to the cliff. It doesn't make any sense when you understand what's happening. It doesn't make any sense to hold to a position of wanting this to continue.
You know, in a metaphoric sense, I mean, I would look at this as if you're in a car heading toward a cliff, and the brakes are out, and you have the choice of either turning the wheel sharply, and maybe you'll roll the car over, and that might be dangerous, damaging, and very uncomfortable. But it's better than going over the cliff. But a lot of people would rather continue on for a few more seconds and not go through the discomfort of rolling over, but with the inevitable result of plunging off the cliff. Which is the better choice? I don't think there's any question about that.
You know, Dane, and you know, when people understand how industrialists have captured our government, you know, we have so much industry that controls regulation, controls the very direction of our government today. Of course, these industrialists want it to continue because they are the ones who are profiteering from all of this. How do you feel about that?
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. And that's where, again, it's imperative that people look at the message being put out from Weather Channel, from mainstream media. All we have for headlines, for example, this week is the big polar vortex cool down, the record cold in places in the continental U.S. It's not all over. Australia is burning to the ground right now, in fact, again, after their two most scorching years ever, along with the rest of the planet. But we don't see any headlines that, oh, by the way, 2014 was the warmest year ever, even without an El Nino. We don't see any of that for exactly the reason you just mentioned, Russ, because the more people think there's nothing wrong with the climate, then they don't want to think about climate engineering. If there's nothing wrong with the climate, why would they be climate engineering? Oh, that helps cover it up. That helps keep business as usual. That keeps the wheels turning as the industrialists want. All of these things, again, it's important for everybody to stand back and look at who would want us to think what and why. That's really important. And the plan of the power structure does change. At one point, did they push the fact that it was warming because they wanted carbon credits and that sort of scam to be pushed on us? Yes, they did at one point. But once the gravity of the situation became so immense, now they, for the last, since about 2007, the last 8 years plus, it's quite clear that they simply want to hide the damage done, just like they did in the Gulf of Mexico. That's such a parallel example. Again, for people who don't know what Corexit is, that's the chemical that was used in the Gulf of Mexico, banned throughout the globe, but they used it here to hide the scope and scale of the oil spill. And yet, again, I'll mention that Corexit, by some environmental impact reviews, made that situation 52 times more toxic. But the power structure didn't care because the goal was to hide the scope and scale of that crime. Same holds true with climate engineering.
Just like they did in the...
I've got someone in the background, I think there, Russ.
Yeah, we're good now. Go ahead.
Okay. Is that a caller?
I had to mute them. I had to take them off.
Okay.
But if the caller...
That's okay.
The callers who call in, please go ahead and mute your phones when you call. Shut off the show, and you'll be able to hear on the phone so you don't have the noise. And, I was going to say, Dane, this is kind of like goes along with the idea of the continuity of government. We hear a lot about we must ensure the continuity of government. And I think most people have no problem with the continuity of government. The problem is the continuity of the current paradigm of government being controlled by those who are so abusive to the people and to the rights of all life.
They are, and their only goal is ensure their continuity. I mean, it's simply a criminal cabal that has run the planet unobstructed because we have a population that does not want to wake up, but that will not have the choice much longer. Again, we don't have countries with governments. We have governments that own countries, and government's just simply a word for a criminal cartel. That's all we have, and everybody who joins that cartel becomes part of it. As we see with congressmen, other representatives, they all toe the line for the criminal cabal. So although it's important we make these people aware that we know what's going on in the skies, and we know they know, it's up to us at a grassroots level to continue to spread that awareness until attorneys, doctors, other experts truly are forced to face the fact that they are going to die with the rest of us if we stay on this current course.
Absolutely.
And we need to reach that.
Go ahead.
To reach that point of awareness. I'm sorry. You said we had a call?
Yeah, we have callers when you're ready, but I totally agree with you. And this is the thing, is that we see so many of these people. We see people working for the EPA. We see people who are working for government. We see police officers who are supporting their own demise. And we need to wake these people up and make them understand that we are on their side. They are, these people who are dropping these poisons, destroying all life, these people are on the same ship that we are on.
All of us are. And back to what I brought up earlier, even down to the domestic conflict that's being fueled right now by all mainstream media and agencies in order to distract people from what's really going on, especially in regard to things like climate engineering. We have the created conflict between police officers, between the black community. People from both sides of that fence need to understand they're both being used as pawns. That we are all, again, as you stated, on the same ship. And a common battle should be the fact that we're being poisoned from the skies, not the kind of conflict that people are distracted over right now. We all need to come together in a common cause toward the common threat that will determine our futures if we do not stop it. Go ahead and take call, Russ, if you've got somebody waiting.
Absolutely. Caller with your number that ends in 19. Who are we speaking with?
Hello?
Hi, you're on. Who are we speaking with?
Hey, thanks. This is Mike. I'm calling from Maryland.
Hi, Mike.
Hey, great show. Hope you'll pardon my cold. I'm dealing with it right now. Hopefully I don't have a sneezing fit. I have maybe 2 or 3 questions I would like to ask you about Fukushima. And number one is, to me, it appears as if, I mentioned this on the chat room, my nickname is Meat Dog on the chat room. I mentioned this, is the Pacific Ocean in danger of becoming a dead sea where virtually no life exists?
Yes. In fact, it's on track for that now. Ocean acidity is up 30%. So it's not just Fukushima. Fukushima is an absolute cataclysm with no end in sight, and we can't know the full ramifications, but certainly that is a huge factor. But acidification is also a factor. Some of the crustaceans, the clam shells that I just examined several days ago, they are a fraction of the thickness that I remember the shells from when I was a boy in the 70s. And I mean, the difference is profound. You can take these shells and put your finger through them. So we have a lot of different factors contributing to the ocean die-off. Going back to climate engineering, we know we have a shredded ozone layer. We know that's decimating plankton populations, so we know the food chain is breaking down. The seals don't have anything to eat. What they do eat is radioactive, certainly to some degree. I mean, we have converging catastrophes. So yes, Fukushima is a problem of immense gravity. And we have how many other nuclear facilities around the globe? About 400. So we face immense challenges at best. But again, the climate engineering, if we don't deal with the fact that we're all breathing these particulates in every day, none of us will be thinking clearly enough to address any issue, Fukushima or any other. So,
has anybody done a study? I mean, that's obviously going to affect. I mean, how many hundreds of millions of people depend on the Pacific Ocean for food sources? Anybody done an analysis of how that's going to affect the people? How many people are going to starve outright because of the loss of the protein? Think of all these people in the Pacific Ocean, from Japan to Indonesia to China to the Pacific West Coast. I mean, this is going to affect the availability and the price of food big time, don't you think?
You're exactly right. In fact, again, this is where it's so important for people, not just the general public, but even people in our own community who I know I've seen a lot of comments that there is no resource depletion, that's all a hoax, and I see comments like this. That is absolutely ridiculous and not based in fact by any means. So your point, Mike, is exactly right. We have statistics right now. We know global pelagic fish populations are down 90 to 95%. In the case of bluefin tuna, 97% decline. Global plankton populations down 50 to 60%. The food chain is imploding. And when people, again, in our own community, who claim there's no resource problem, how can that possibly be stated? And it certainly damages the credibility of trying to raise geoengineering awareness if people in our own community are putting out facts that are so completely wrong. So your points are absolutely valid, Mike, and this is what I'm saying. When the power structure is trying to create distractions, as the type I just mentioned earlier in the show, it's to try to keep people's mind off the fact that the food chain is breaking down. It will affect countless, not just millions, but billions around the globe, because what nature has formerly provided for free, 75% of all global GDP, for free. That's no longer the case. That all we had to do was go out and catch the fish. We didn't have to grow it, raise it, nurture it. We just had to go catch it. Nature provided the fish free, no longer.
Well, sure, and people need to realize the starfish are melting, for God's sake. But I have one final question. I don't want to take up too much time. You've been very informative and very cordial and courteous. I just have one final question. I think Fukushima is the biggest is the biggest environmental disaster to hit this planet. But why hasn't there been any call for Japan, the country of Japan, or TEPCO, or the government of Japan to compensate the people that are affected? Shouldn't there be some lawsuits? Shouldn't there be some kind of way that people should put pressure on Japan to compensate the people that are affected by this catastrophe?
They can't do that. They won't do that, because then they would have to acknowledge that people have been affected, and they're going to do everything they can to hide it. We have converging catastrophes from many directions. Right now, the power structure's goal is to simply hide that. Why else would they have the Olympics lined up for Tokyo for the next round? I mean, how ridiculous is that? So, again, by doing that, though... Sorry?
That's insane.
It is insane. It's utter insanity, but that's part of how they hide the gravity of the issue. People think, oh, well, they're going to have the Olympics there. It can't be that bad. The same with the polar vortex in the U.S. right now. We have all this record cold, so it can't be that warm. It's all the many ways in which the power structure hides the gravity of what's unfolding as long as they can, and that's exactly what they're doing while they're digging in, literally digging into the deep underground bases, the DUMBs. People can Google this and look it up. There's a lot of data on this. So their goal right now is to simply hide the gravity of what's unfolding as long as they can to keep the population from panicking. But we need to get it to the point where people do understand that the ship is going down, so that they are forced to wake up, because we all know the vast majority of the population will not wake up until they are forced to, until they realize that keeping their head in the sand will not save them. Will not save them. So,
sure.
On the gravity of Fukushima, I don't downplay the impact of that issue, and that impact is only beginning. There's no end in sight, and I don't argue with the immensity of that. Back to the climate engineering, I would still argue that is an even greater issue. Not negating Fukushima at all, but that if we don't do something about the fact that we're breathing in these particulates that is affecting our cognitive ability every single day, we will not be able to deal with Fukushima or anything else. So, and this is the one issue that affects everybody everywhere. They can see it. It's the issue that's more likely to be recognized by the public because it's above their head every day. If we could just reach critical mass here, it would help expose a lot of things, including Fukushima, including 9/11. That this one issue is the potential hole in the armor of the power structure. If we can keep hammering on this target and expose this issue, the curtain would come back for a lot of other issues, Mike.
Hey, thanks. We're being assaulted on so many fronts. It's hard to know where to start. Thank you very much. Take care.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you, Mike, for calling in, and appreciate that. Caller with your number that ends in 24. Who are we speaking with?
Hi, this is Rachel.
Hi, Rachel.
Hello.
Hi. Hey, Dane. I'm wondering if you are aware of what the Navy has been up to and what they're about to attempt.
Are you talking about the Olympic Peninsula?
Yes. Well, not just that. All of Oregon, a little bit of California, Washington, Idaho, that they're admitting they'll go out of range somewhat. I'm talking about what happened last year and what is about to happen now, and that the public deadline has been moved up to the 9th of January.
Well, they're up to a lot of things, and again, I spoke with a PR person for the Navy several years ago as they were beginning to use depleted uranium ammunition for practice
Yes.
on the U.S. West Coast. And
they're also dumping it. They're also dumping it overboard.
yeah,
And along with what they're dumping overboard is a whole long list of other toxins that even include cyanide, solvents, heavy metals.
They're dumping fracking fluids off the coast as well. So,
exactly.
I mean, there's no limit to the human insanity at this point, no limit. And this is where individuals have to take a stand. Individuals in the armed services have to take a stand and say, no, I will not participate in this insanity. So when it comes to the marine die-off, yes, Fukushima is an issue, but everything you and I just discussed is also an issue.
It's huge.
It is huge.
It's huge. I mean, last year they snuck this by at the very end of the year. When they knew nobody would have time, they gave a deadline and then moved it way up so that nobody could even read their 2,000-page document, much less comment on it. And it was a done deal. They did that on purpose. They've been planning this since 2010. They've been active at it since 2010. And what they themselves call it shock and awe, all the way around all of our coast, from all of our west coast, the Gulf of Mexico, and the Atlantic coast, with the permission to, quote unquote, take animals. That means use whales, anything, for target practice. They're using rockets in the air, they're using chemicals, they're using lasers, they're using electromagnetic pulses. I'm thinking of the clams you just mentioned. Oh my God, they're doing it in berthing areas, they're doing it in calving areas. They're doing it in Lake Michigan, they're doing it in Puget Sound. And now they're poised to take it to the air all over the Northwest. Using electromagnetic pulses coordinated with trucks on the ground.
I know it's from so many directions it's hard to calculate, but a lot of people think that this is some intentional intent to kill everything off, and I don't buy that. In that I know people that claim to care about the environment who live in the woods and yet have trucks coming up with chemicals to spray around their entire property to kill insects. They use Roundup everywhere in their yard. They don't seem to have any regard or concern for the damage. They've convinced themselves that none of this stuff will hurt them. And it's that kind of mindset that runs the world, who think that they can do... We know this from psychoanalysis of psychopathic people, that they have almost a common thread. I repeated this a lot. It's important to remember. They have a near total lack of comprehension as to the consequences of their actions, even to themselves. It's their mindset. It's the Navy PR person that I talked to who didn't have a clue about depleted uranium and the consequences. No clue at all. Seemed to think it was totally benign. So people simply are unaware. And how do these people get to run our planet? Because so much of the population does not have any sense of responsibility toward the common good. They think their only responsibility is their own personal pursuit of pleasure, and that's how we end up in this dark corner that we're all in. So that paradigm needs to change. People need to turn off American Idol, forget the golf game, join in the fight to raise awareness, or we will have nothing left to save. So your points are well taken, and again, the die-off along the coast is for exactly that reason. Russ, on the percentage of people who you probably know as well that participate in things like everything I and the caller just discussed, whether they're part of the military or not, they're just simply doing their job in their mind, and they don't question anything. You know people like that, right?
I most certainly do, yes.
So, I mean, you're in the course of your conversation with such people, it's sometimes hard to deprive them from that mindset that they're just doing their job, right?
Yeah, people want security. I think this is part of what it comes. It all comes down to fear. I think at the real core is that people don't want to stir anything up. They want security. They want what they want, and there's fear involved in giving up your toys, making a change in your life, standing up to authority, standing up for what's right. So much so that people would rather watch poisons dumped than to risk whatever they risk by standing up and doing the right thing. And this is how we got to where we are today.
Well, I think it's worth it. The reason I'm calling in, I mean, among other things, is because I searched your site for Navy and I couldn't come up with anything. And I found this elsewhere, and the deadline is January 9th to register comments. You can register comments at the Navy's own site and call all your representatives.
Are you on Facebook by chance? Do you participate in Facebook?
No, I don't do Facebook. So
if you know anybody who does, it would be very helpful. Or you can send that to I or Russ at at Global Skywatch or GeoEngineeringWatch.org. We certainly need to post that on our pages. It's hard to keep up with all the various directions in which the walls are closing in. We do our best, but it helps when people help us to do that. So if you can give us something that we can post, and you can get friends who are on Facebook to post, that would be very helpful also. And Russ, to back up what you said, that people don't want to accept the changes that are coming. They will be forced to accept it. They can accept it well or accept it poorly, but accept the changes they will. Collapse is coming. It's absolutely coming. And the sooner people choose to embrace their role in this and stand up and help us to sound the alarm, expose the insanity, and have some chance at stopping it, the sooner that happens, the more we may have left to salvage. People need to decide if they're going to be part of the solution or remain part of the problem. And that's where it comes down to an existential purpose.
Well, let me just say that you can reach the Navy. It's their draft proposal for 2014. I mean that they wrote up in 2014 to take place in 2015 and 16. It's NWTTEIS/OEIS, and
if you can email that to us, it would help too, because a lot of people are not in a position to write when they're listening. If you can email that to Global Skywatch or GeoEngineeringWatch.org, that would help as well. And if you can get anybody you know on Facebook to
calling
join
our Congress
site.
people at toll-free 1-866-220-0044. I have a comment about the people in the service. I'm 67. My parents adopted me. They were old. My father was in World War II. He was over 30. He didn't think there was a chance that he would be drafted because of various physical conditions, but eventually he was. He went on and on and on. He hated the service. He went on and on and on about how they break you down, make you feel like you're a child, like you can't tie your own shoelaces. You must learn to tie them their way. They do this over and over. He claimed it was because younger people, you can tell people whose frontal cortexes are not fully formed yet, to charge, and they will run into gunfire.
Well,
but you can't tell somebody over 30 to charge and run into gunfire.
This is why they also don't have the draft anymore right now, because they would get too diverse a group pulled in that might think for themselves, as what happened in the Vietnam War. So now they go to the volunteer army, which is reaching a segment of society that's more programmable. It's the same people that we see that we're told to go out and put the goggles on and watch the nuclear blast go off and don't worry, you're safe. And we see this over and over. I agree with you, but this is what we have to expose. On the data on the January 9th deadline, if you could send that would be much more helpful, because, again, a lot of people are not going to get it off the show. They listen to the show after, or they need to write it down with a link. So if you can get someone to send that to us, that would be great.
It's going to be a bit before I can. Can I send it into your site?
Yes, please. GeoEngineering Watch or Global Skywatch. Russ's site, either one. You can get it to us. And that's
with regard to Fukushima, I wanted to mention that outside of our bay at Farallones Islands, I don't know how many people realize there are over 455,000 containers of nuclear waste. There is also the highly radioactive hull of the USS Enterprise, I think it was, that was involved in the Bikini Islands issue long ago. Anyway, that's where everybody goes and fish. Everybody fishes there.
People
my
are not
son-in-law just caught a bunch of crabs there from a boat, and a boat that takes you out to Farallones to fish.
Yeah, we understand. I mean, the scope and
glow
scale
in the dark, and I got laughed at. Well,
let's keep sounding the alarm. And again, if you can get that data to us, that would be great. And with you on all counts. I mean, the contamination is coming from a lot of different directions. But if we focus on what's being dumped on us from the sky as a primary goal, and people see that, they will, I believe, begin to see a lot of these other issues. But thank you for the call, caller. And if you can get that data to us, that would be great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, thank you for the call. We got a couple comments from the chat room. Dan is on the chat room. He's saying, please make the point that the fact that the world community hasn't done a thing about Fukushima speaks volumes as to the severity of all of our problems.
Russ, I mean, your thoughts, that's certainly absolutely true, nor has the society as a whole done a thing about what's being dumped on our heads every single day. How many people do you know, Russ, again, that you just can't get them to acknowledge or examine what's going on above their heads, even though it affects you every single day. You can hardly breathe right now. We talked off the air about what you're going through with not being able to sleep. I mean, this is an absolute all-out assault day in, day out. Russ, how many people do you know that you've communicated this to that will not do any investigation? How many?
Exactly, and it's very much akin to being told you have cancer and pretending you don't.
Now, what do you do when that happens? This is what I deal with a lot of calls in this arena for people who are fixated on one person that won't listen, and they want to find 100 different ways to try to reach this one person. I would argue, don't beat your head against the concrete. Move on. Move on to somebody else that's willing to wake up. Plant the seed, even with those who don't want to wake up. It's somewhere in their mind. And move on to those who are willing. Don't continue to beat your head against the same wall or the same agency. Move on. These people will be forced to wake up as the cataclysm that's unfolding around us continues. So just keep planting seeds, especially with the non-choir. Reach out to new groups with credible data. Don't rant and rave. Pass them on something credible. Say this is happening. We're not being told. Media's not talking about it. The government's not disclosing it. We need to get this issue out in the open. Just pass on some simple statements with some credible data. Keep planting seeds.
And I would back you up by saying that when you're out, if you have flyers with you or make up business cards, little business cards with just a website and a message. I mean, one of the new bumper stickers that we may put out is it's going to have our website and just say before it's too late. Doesn't tell you anything about what it's out. It just says before it's too late, and people are intrigued to go look at it. What is that about? What is that about? But the point is that if you are rejected by 19 people and one person takes an interest, that's all we need. We don't need 100% of the population to respond to this. So don't waste your time with the people who aren't interested. Find the people who are awake, who are hungry to help, and we will have enough, but we've got to reach those people.
We do, and a lot of people suggest that, well, we need to file lawsuits and do this, and that's great if we have the resources to do it. I don't, and without an army, we can't wage a war. We can't stand against this without enough people being awake, enough critical mass, and I would argue also that if we can simply reach that critical mass, we won't need to hire the attorney. The attorneys will enter this battle of their own accord because they know they and their children are going to go down with the ship. Physicians and other experts will enter. They're starting to now. So I argue back to the same point. If we can simply reach critical mass of awareness, because nobody is exempt from the consequences of these programs, we will have an army with all these other people involved who will pick up the ball and carry it on their own. With just a few of us filing a lawsuit, even if we had the resources, wouldn't matter if there wasn't enough of the public to really make sure the issue got covered, because the media can and does completely black us out, as they did with the major community meeting in Northern California. 500 citizens, scientists, county officials, city officials in attendance, and there was a total media blackout. So my point is, until we have enough people willing to get off the bench and realize it's now or never, then we can't do anything else. We have to reach that critical mass first. That's keeping the horse in front of the cart. Once we reach that critical mass, the dominoes will fall on their own. Was there another question from the chat room, Les?
Oh, yeah, we've got a couple things going on. Anyone who wants to call in, there's still time to call in. The number is 718-717-8296, 718-717-8296. We do have a caller, and we do have a comment from the chat room I'll read to you real quick. Somebody posted this. Scott Stevens has a video out stating that the spraying programs are to get ramped up in January, and that the plan is to push the drought in California further into the farmlands and into the West.
Well, one, I don't know that any of us can know what their plan is definitively. I mean, certainly we see that the long-term forecast, which is nothing more than the scheduled weather, indicates that it may continue, but that can change on a dime. As we saw, the forecast for the fall in California were to be dry, and we did get some rain in Northern California. Not nearly as much as we would have if they would not have aerosolized, but they changed directions in a very short time, and all the long-term scheduled weather changed. So I think it's hard to say definitively exactly what the power structure will do at any given point in time. And there's a much bigger agenda going on, much bigger. Again, so much of what's going on is to try to hide the gravity of what's unfolding globally, especially the methane cataclysm in the Arctic that's happening right now. Methane's filling the atmosphere right now. I would argue that's the single biggest factor that they won't be able to hide for much longer. It's the single biggest linchpin in all of our collective coffins if that continues. And we see, again, what's climate engineering's connection to that? It's altering wind currents, that's altering ocean currents, it's pushing warm water into the Arctic, it's shredding the ozone layer. Even though they can shade the Arctic, and they have, and they can chemically ice nucleate to try to keep some of the surface slush going, the overall effect, that's what's important, the overall effect is to make the situation far worse, not better. So there's many more factors being played out than just this or that. Many factors, and that's where all of us need to stop thinking dichotomously that they're doing it for just this reason or just that reason.
Yeah, my research shows the same thing. There are a lot of different agendas going on here that are being played out, and none of them are beneficial for the public at large, really. Caller with the number that ends in 05. Who are we speaking with?
This is Rick.
Hi, Rick.
Hi, Rick.
Hi, guys. Yeah, this is Rick. I'm calling from Los Angeles. And, well, you know, I'm utterly, this is a horrifying thing unfolding in front of us.
It is.
I know I saw the first spraying when 1999, the sky was just tic-tac-toed here in L.A., and I remember I had a gut feeling at that time. I said, this isn't going to stop. The first ones I saw. And it's played out that way, obviously.
On the ramp up, you can continue in a minute. I want to elaborate on one point. On the one, it's gone on since the late 40s. We know that. But there was, as you mentioned, in 98, 99. 98 was the warmest year ever recorded until this year, until 2014. But there was a big ramp up, 98, 99, big ramp up. And in fact, that's when the term climate change was really put into effect because they needed a term that people would accept. That would help condition them for these radical swings in temperature. Again, in one case, Amarillo, Texas, 2013, from 100 degrees, May 1st, 2013, to snow the next day. The term climate change helped people to accept that as being normal when it's anything but normal. So, it's not surprising that you saw them in 99 because there was a big ramp up. And back to what the Scott Stevens video that was asked about, that they're going to ramp up. They've been ramping up. They're continuously ramping up. So it's not there was just one event.
This is the biggest story on Earth. I mean, and
yes.
I don't want to denigrate Fukushima, and certainly a great deal of Fukushima had to have drifted up into the fake atmosphere and clouds and made its way around the globe. I'm guessing.
Yes.
And I want to speak on a very a personal, physical level here. I suffer from these electromagnetic frequencies. And when this last so-called rain came up here, after all this drought, all these bone-dry days, we suddenly have this rain. And these ominous, weighty cloud cover, dark stuff, I was dizzy. My teeth were in sudden pain, headaches, but not real headaches. I can tell the difference. And I just want to say that to whoever's listening, that if you felt that way, I'm quite certain it came from, the electromagnetic power that was exerted to release all this rain. That's my view.
Well, I think that it can't be separated. Again, the RF frequencies, the more conductive atmosphere from the saturation of the metallic particulates, none of these things can be separated out. They're all a part of the equation. They have to be affecting our health. They have to be. So I don't deny anything you're saying, and yes, I believe it is the biggest story on the planet. It's the most critical, not the only one. Again, Fukushima, horrific problem, but as you said, this is a matter of trying to prioritize with the challenges we face, and I still would make the argument that the more we can expose, if we could expose this one issue, it would pull the curtain back on so many other issues, including Fukushima, and everybody can move that ball forward from wherever they're at. We can fight like the colonists did from behind rocks and trees, from whatever our location, whatever our ability. We have people putting up billboards, Frank Reps, Greg Palin. There's other people around the country that are putting up billboards, helping in that regard. Other people are doing presentations, Wanda Allen, Corey Gunnels. Again, a lot of people coming together to try to raise spot fires of awareness, and those circles of awareness are growing rapidly. If we all participate in that manner every day to think of who haven't we talked to, what group haven't we given data to, if we all focused on that, we will make much more progress than we otherwise might imagine, even at this late hour.
And I want to make just thank you guys, because this idea of making a business card with maybe an image of the trails and then your website, I think is a great idea.
Interesting that you brought that up. In fact, we had those at one time. They're being made again now. I'll have lots of those to distribute to anybody who wants them. And they'll
can get them through your site then. I'm
going to try to mail out as many as I can for free. And they'll have the GeoEngineering Watch app on them as well. So I'm going to try to make as many of those available to whoever wants them that I can. And I can be contacted through Facebook and so forth. And otherwise, I might put them on the site for just the cost, which is not much. I mean, those are very inexpensive to buy. So,
I just want to make a final comment, and I'll make room for other people to call. You were on Dr. Staninger's show recently. Dr. Hildegard Staninger?
Yes.
She's a personal friend of mine. She's here in Los Angeles. I've known her
for
quite a long. Yeah, she's done tremendous work,
yes.
And I've talked to her many times, and I talked about, I think, what's plastic in the materials.
Russ, you want to chime in on that? The smell that you.
I would love to chime in on the plastic. Yes, this is something that has happened. This plastic, this burnt plastic, burnt rubber smell that I can smell.
Yes,
has occurred in the last couple years. It's the newest type that has been introduced that I'm aware of. And it coincided with the snow that seems not to melt properly, and also with someone who posted a video, and Greg also did this, someone posted a video where they melted the snow and let it sit for a while, and what formed was this gooey substance on the top of the water. It was all a clean bowl, but the snow showed this gooey substance that smelled like model cement glue. And that, personally, is what I actually smell when they spray the plastic type. It is a burnt plastic, burnt rubber type of odor along with model cement glue. And it causes, in me personally, I'm very sensitive, it causes me inflammation in my muscles and my bones and headache, chest and heart pain. Very, very debilitating. I end up walking like a sick person when they are spraying this type, which has been very frequent in Philadelphia for the past 3 weeks. It's been just very frequent. Go ahead.
I've smelled exactly what you've talked about, and I've even had these sores, and what erupts out of my skin. And this is not Morgellons per se, but it is clear and it's sticky and it's plastic.
Well, this, on the ice nucleating, which they're doing a tremendous amount of, I mean, it's so visible on the radar. In Texas yesterday, moisture feeding right up from Mexico was just flashing out the snow as soon as it hit Texas for no reason. There's no orographic enhancement, no colliding air mass. They can nucleate whatever they want. In fact, we had snow in Southern California at elevations of 1,000 feet. When a stone throw away, elevations of 2,000 and 3,000 feet got none, got only rain.
I saw the very evidence. I live down here. Yes.
So this is where again they can make it. They've made it snow in places in the Middle East that have never had snow in 25 years of recorded history. They can make it snow where they want. And this smell, I actually smelled here, and a few other residents in the county. When this was going on, the nucleating was visible on the radar. And I thought perhaps I had a battery issue or some sort of problem with my alternative energy system because the smell was quite strong. And indeed, it was just outside in the atmosphere and not coming from any of my components. So God knows what they're putting on us at this point. They don't care. They're desperate and more dangerous than they've ever been. Again, this is an all-out assault that supersedes all other issues at this point. If we can get this issue to light and to a halt, I would again make the argument that the dominoes of the power structure will start to fall. They know it. They'll try to hide this issue all they can. The attacks against all of us who are engaged in this fight are now greater than they have ever been. The pushback is greater, which means we are gaining ground. Again, if we all pull together, if we all from our own location do everything we can every day to move the ball forward, that will be too many holes in the dam for them to plug. And that's what needs to happen so we can reach critical mass.
Well, I just want to thank both of you for having the show, and I'm glad I could contribute a little bit to it.
Thank you. Thanks for the call.
And I will keep a look at your website, and I'd love to get some of those cards, and I'd be willing to, chip in a little bit to get some of them.
Well, we'll get them out as quick as we can, and I'll try to distribute as many as I can. So that's coming, and I'll announce when they're ready.
Okay, you guys. Thanks much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Carl. Great information. Appreciate the willingness to help, too. You can always contact me if I can help get some stuff to you as well. We can probably take one more caller right now. We've got Kim, who is Skyped in. Kim, good to have you, as always.
Nothing coming through us.
We just lost Kim right when I was introducing her. I think.
Hi.
There she is. How you doing, Kim?
Good, thank you. Sorry about that. I had the volume turned down for just a minute.
Oh, no problem. We've got about 2 minutes left, 2.5 minutes. How are you doing?
I am fighting an upper respiratory that I've been dealing with for 2 weeks. I've been really struggling. Everybody in the whole entire community is sick. I even asked a pharmacist when I was there the other day, what is going on? And she said most of her people that have been coming in there have had it for over a month. Something is going on. I'm calling it the Christmas virus. And the other thing I wanted to mention to you guys is we're about to get a massive nor'easter. This thing is extremely huge. It is going from all the way up past the Great Lakes, all the way down into Louisiana and Gulf Coast. My friend in Texas told me a couple days ago that they were getting snow, freezing rain, power outages. It's absolutely insane. This thing is taking up literally from central U.S., north and south, all the way across the entire eastern seaboard, and this is really concerning for me.
Well, again, the gravity of attempt to hide what's truly unfolding, especially with the American population. They're whipping up the biggest, most impactful, quote-unquote, engineered winter storm that they can to try to mask the headlines that obviously should be coming out right now about the statistics on 2014 overall. So, I mean, as the data becomes more overwhelming in one direction, they'll try to hide it as much as they can with... Not sure what that was.
That was
just blow your mind tonight. I'm so hyped, but it's no hype from this.
Russ, you know what's going on there?
That's coming in through the radio station. I'm not sure. It's not something I have control of, unfortunately.
Yeah, we have a lot of that kind of thing happening whenever critical discussions are happening. But anyway, we all need to recognize that the weather is not natural in any way, shape, or form. We all need to keep looking at data constantly to keep changing our compass heading as the data dictates. That's all.
Okay, we're down. We're at the end of our show. We thank you, everybody, for joining us. This is GeoEngineering Watch Radio.
Thank you.